10:51 GMT or Universal Time. And at 10:52, just a minute later, the trunk separating while Dragon was flying just off to the west of Australia. So, claw separated, trunk separated. Next up, deorbit burn.
Yeah, right now, Dragon is running exclusively on battery power now that the trunk is separated. Also, right now, telemetry is looking really good for the vehicle. The nitrox system is primed for cabin and suit cooling, and the heat shield is exposed and ready for atmospheric re-entry. Like I said before, that nitrox system, which is essentially the air that we breathe every day down here on Earth, nitrogen-oxygen combination, a mixture. It's the same stuff that they put in your scuba tank if you are a scuba diver. The nitrox system is used to cool the cabin and the suit to keep the crew comfortable during the re-entry phase. They will actually have cold air flowing through their suits themselves, as well as through the cabin itself. So a two-pronged approach to maintaining a comfortable temperature there inside the capsule. Like we said, the next event that we have coming up will be the deorbit burn, which we're expecting that to commence in 1 minute and 40 seconds. According to the ground tracking map there, Dragon is approaching the southwestern coast of Australia. We're less than a...
We're excited.
Jinx.
We are inside a minute to deorbit burn. And again, one more time, this is the long one. This is expected to last 11 minutes, 22 seconds. This is that burn that commits the Dragon to re-enter in the Earth's atmosphere. And you can get kind of a sense of just how far they're going to go. By the time they fire this burn, they're just going to be off to the southwest of Australia. And this is going to realign their orbit to intersect with that point off the coast of Pensacola where they're going to be splashing down.
Yeah, this is the moment where Dragon is fully committed to the re-entry point. Again, we are aiming for just off the coast of Pensacola, Florida. Our recovery ship Go Navigator is ready and waiting to begin the recovery process right after splashdown occurs. Once again, if you're just joining us, we are now in the final steps of the deorbit sequence. The deorbit burn will be starting here in just a couple of seconds.
And we just heard confirmation deorbit burn has begun. Coming at 10:56 a.m. Pacific. Again, while the Dragon spacecraft just off the southwestern coast of Australia. So here we go. 11 more minutes to go.
I'm ready, and I'm sure it's safe to say that Bob and Doug are ready. They've done a number of interviews over the last few weeks while they were on station, and just the excitement and the enthusiasm for the mission is palpable. Just the opportunity to be able to fly these two incredible humans to the International Space Station and back is such an honor, and we're just really excited to get our space dads home safely and back to their families as quickly as possible. This deorbit burn that we are currently in, it will last 11 minutes and 22 seconds.
Already a little more than a minute 10 in counting, so we have about 10 minutes to go. Just heard a call. The propulsion system performing nominally. That's the word we always want to hear, we always like to hear. Just under 10 minutes to go left in this burn.
And all within the last 10 minutes, again, it seemed like we had slow progress of events all morning, and then boom, within the last 10 minutes we had a couple of things happening. Dragon maneuvered itself into the appropriate position to jettison its trunk, and it did so successfully, nominally, and then it initiated the deorbit burn just a couple minutes ago. Like I mentioned earlier, this deorbit burn is the last time those 4 forward Draco thrusters will fire. Forward kind of meaning at the top of the capsule. Dragon Endeavour has not yet entered Earth's atmosphere, but this deorbit burn is what will line the vehicle up and put it on its final trajectory to the landing site in the Gulf of Mexico. Right now, although we can't see it at the moment, Bob and Doug are using their screens to keep tabs on the burn duration, Draco thruster firings, and trajectory details such as entry angle, capsule perigee, and how much distance is remaining until that deorbit burn terminates. So Dragon is flying itself, so all they really have to do is stay strapped in their seats and keep tabs on things. So while this burn is completing, again, we're just a few minutes into it. It'll last 11 minutes and 22 seconds. We have a couple more events coming up afterward in, let me check my timeline here real quick. In just under 44 minutes, we will have the initial parachute deployment. So that is essentially when we will be deploying the drogue parachutes, the small parachutes that are designed to further slow down the capsule as it is re-entering the atmosphere, as well as stabilizing it. And then a minute after that, we will deploy the drogue parachutes, and that is targeted for 11:44 a.m. Pacific, 18:44 Universal. And then just a couple minutes after that, we will have Splashdown. So again, that's all in just under 44 minutes. Right now, we are performing the deorbit burn.
We've got a little over 7 minutes left in this burn. And the only performance call we've gotten so far is everything's still looking good with the propulsion system on Dragon. Once this burn completes, we will have kind of a couple minutes, about 3 minutes to catch our breath before things pick right back up and we get the nose cone closed. And then there'll be a bit more of a gap, and at that point they will maneuver Dragon to its entry attitude, essentially heat shield pointed down and into the line of velocity, and that heat shield protecting them from the heat of re-entry. Temperatures getting up to about 3,500 degrees on the Dragon spacecraft. But everything looking good. We're about 5 minutes into this deorbit burn. Again, it started right at 10:56 a.m. Pacific time, 17:56 GMT. Dragon was flying about 260 statute miles just off the southwestern coast of Australia.
So right now, during this burn, we just heard a call that we're halfway through the burn and everything is looking great, everything performing nominally. During this burn right now, Bob and Doug are currently monitoring the deorbit tool, which, like I said earlier, captures things like the perigee, the re-entry interface, how much distance remains before the burn itself is terminated. They're also monitoring the burn duration and the firing of those Draco thrusters located there at on the forward bulkhead of the capsule. There on your screen, you actually can see what Bob and Doug are seeing right now. That is that tool on their screen. So on the left and the right of the center screen, that is the deorbit. That is the deorbit monitoring tool.
Just past 7 minutes into the burn, a little over 4 minutes remaining. Everything's still looking good with Dragon Ship Endeavour's deorbit burn to commit it to coming home. Everything continuing to be on track for our splashdown. Again, our splashdown time right at 11:48 and 24 seconds Pacific was the calculated time. It would be typical if we're a couple seconds on either side, but that time is 18:48 GMT or Universal. But we're already through several of the really major steps to initiate this re-entry. The claw is separated, the trunk is gone, the deorbit burn has begun, and we're more than halfway through, just a little under 3.5 minutes remaining.
There on your screen is a shot of our Mission Control Center here at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California, where the Dragon operators and mission leaders they're monitoring Dragon's progress. They continue to watch the propulsion data and all the GNC data, making sure that everything is looking healthy and nominal.
We're just about 2 minutes 30 seconds until the end of this burn. We'll listen for the call out up to the crew on the performance of the burn, and then they'll start moving into the next steps. Again, we'll get about a 3-minute breather before the next major milestone comes up when we get ready to close the nose cone, that protecting the docking ring, guidance, navigation, and control sensors, and also these 4 forward bulkhead thrusters that are currently performing the deorbit burn during the actual re-entry process. So we are at just under 2 minutes from the conclusion of the deorbit burn.
Again, Dragon is committed to its splashdown point. There is no going back.
Yeah, we already have the recovery team ready and on standby. They've been there for quite some time now. Here, and we have about 90 seconds left in the burn. Weather looking great at the splashdown site off Pensacola. Winds just around 2.5 miles per hour. Sea being described as like glass by the Corps here in Hawthorne, radioing up to the crew. Ended up getting fantastic weather for this first crewed splashdown of Dragon. We are 1 minute away from the end of deorbit burn.
Again, this burn is placing Dragon on its final trajectory to the landing site off of the coast of Pensacola, Florida. That is in the Gulf of Mexico. And our recovery vessel, Go Navigator, and the recovery team are ready and waiting to see Bob and Doug come back through the atmosphere. Like we said, this deorbit burn, during this deorbit burn, not entering the atmosphere just yet. That won't happen for about or touchdowns.
We are Dragon, SpaceX, deorbit burn complete, performance nominal, nose cone closure initiated. Nominal burn, nose cone inward. All right. The orbit burn complete. We heard the call, nominal burn. Bob and Doug are on their way back home. This burn commits them to re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. Ooh, all we have left now is to wait. That was really one of the last major moments before they start re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. We'll have the nose cone closure coming up next. That should be coming in just a couple of minutes, as we had about a 3-minute span between the end of the deorbit burn and that moment.
Yeah, the nose cone is actually currently in the closing process, so it doesn't just snap shut. It does slowly close and lock. So right now, that nose cone is in the process of moving back into the closed position, and we will hear the call out for whenever it has fully closed and whenever the latches have secured.
Seeing some data, it looks like it's about halfway there. It's open a little bit more than 90 degrees. I think the exact count was 110 degrees opening range or range of motion for the nose cone. So we're a little more than halfway now to getting that nose cone closed.
So I have just heard that we have a visual on nose cone closure. So it'll take a minute for the hooks to close in. They close in a series, so the first series will close and then the second will follow, and that'll take about a minute to complete.
All right, well, as we just wait for the finish to that nose cone closure, we'll have a bit of time again. We'll have about 20 minutes, or a little over 21 from right now, until we really start re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. We're expecting that entry interface in about 21 minutes. And then right around that time, we'll also be looking for that blackout we've been talking about. We've had a little bit of what we call Radicom at this point, so you'll hear kind of some sporadic interruptions in the audio transmissions just because of how Dragon was oriented for the trunk jettison and for the actual deorbit burn. But that blackout period will be due to the plasma that builds up around the capsule, interfering with those antennas either sending or receiving data.
So I've heard the call out that the first set of hooks for nose cone closure are in motion. So this will complete in 2 sets. The first set is now in motion, so really good news to hear that. Everything looking good so far. Like I mentioned before, in the background, Dragon has inhibited the forward bulkhead Draco thrusters that we just used to complete that deorbit burn. This is to ensure that it's safe to latch that nose cone shut for reentry. Also, the vehicle has initiated the nitrox purge. Nitrox is simply a mixture of nitrogen and oxygen. It's what we breathe, and the nitrox that is being purged into the system is cooled, so allowing that cool air to circulate around the cabin, but also inside of Bob and Doug's suits will help to keep them cool and comfortable during re-entry, which will be coming up in about 20 minutes. We're currently tracking 23 minutes and 20 seconds until entry begins. So in case you're just joining us at this point, the nose cone has closed. The forward thrusters have been disabled, and we are latching the nose cone. Currently underway with the first set of hooks, the first of 2 sets. And we just had confirmation that the first set of hooks is closed, so now the second set will begin to close as well.
As we mentioned, after this nose cone's fully closed, we'll have a couple of minutes to catch our breath again, about 20 minutes or just under 20 minutes until Dragon will start to maneuver itself to the entry attitude, essentially pointing the heat shield in the direction of travel, as it's going to be leading the way through their re-entry through the Earth's atmosphere. We'll look to run into that communications blackout at about 36 minutes after the hour, expecting that to last for about 6 minutes, and then we'll get that back shortly before we deploy the drogue parachutes, followed just less than a minute later by the main parachutes, and by that point hopefully we should have some views of Dragon re-entering the Earth's atmosphere and parachuting to a splashdown in the Gulf.
So there in the front row of Mission Control in the center, you can see CEO Elon Musk and our President Gwen Shotwell sitting side by side at those center consoles. In addition to those two, the room is filled with Dragon operators and mission leaders who are continuing to monitor the health and telemetry of the crew and the capsule. Right now, nose cone closure is underway. The first of 2 sets of hook latching has completed. And we just heard a call out that the
SpaceX nose cone is secure for entry.
Copy, we see it on board.
All right, great confirmation there. Back and forth from Mission Control here to Bob and Doug up in Dragon Endeavour. That Bob and Doug have also confirmed on their displays that the nose cone has closed nominally and it is secure for entry.
All right, so that nose cone close completion. A lot of tongue twisters with this right now. Coming with Dragon still flying over the South Pacific. It is on its way home. We're going to gradually start to see its altitude dip. Right now, already only 207 miles over the Earth's surface. It was at about 260 miles when it was still over on the other side of the Pacific Ocean off the southwestern coast of Australia when it fired its engines for that deorbit burn. So its altitude going to continue to drop. Once it gets to about 100 kilometers in altitude, or about 62 miles, it's going to begin what's known as entry interface, and that's when it really begins to start to feel the effects of the Earth's atmosphere. Will once again be experiencing lift and drag as it's no longer in that near vacuum environment in low Earth orbit.
So we're essentially stepping into the second half of entry. Dragon is now beginning to flush nitrox into the cabin and continuing to top it off in Bob and Doug's suits as well. Again, this is cool air essentially flowing through the cabin and the suits. This is what will allow them and the cabin itself to remain comfortable during re-entry while those external temperatures reach 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. At this point in time, Dragon's orientation is such that the heat shield is pointing forward, if you will, leading the capsule toward the landing site. If you've been following along over the last couple days, you know that weather has been a big ticket item for us. The recovery team has been busy over the last week working to determine the selection of a landing site In order to increase the options for space station departures, the team identified a total of 7 possible splashdown locations. In order to meet NASA's timeline requirements for crew recovery, these potential splashdown locations have to be close to a port, and they have to be close to medical facilities. So with all of that in mind, you add the ever-evolving weather conditions of Florida, but also that tropical storm Isaiah that was moving through. And it's easy to see how determining that landing site is quite a complex process. Since Dragon is capable of splashdown on either side of the Florida Panhandle, we in fact have 2 identical and fully equipped recovery vessels ready to support. One in the Gulf of Mexico, which is what we're utilizing today, Go Navigator, and the other located off the east coast of Florida, able to service landing sites in the Atlantic Ocean. That one is Go Searcher. Like I mentioned, today we'll be splashing down in the Gulf of Mexico, just off the coast of Pensacola, Florida. Go Navigator, that recovery ship I just mentioned, is in place and ready and waiting for Bob and Doug. The WB-57 plane, if it hasn't taken off already, I'm sure it will be very soon.
Yep, it's in the air.
Okay, great. That's what will provide our first views of Dragon during re-entry. We'll get a thermal cam off of that airplane, allowing us to see the capsule as it is re-entering the atmosphere. If you were tuned in for our Demo-1 broadcast, it was basically a big ball of light coming at us. We'll also have cameras on board the recovery vessel, so as Dragon gets closer and is deploying those parachutes, we will also be able to have hopefully some really clear footage of that all occurring as well.
All right, so Dragon's altitude continuing to dip. Right now about 174 miles over planet Earth. We're under 11.5 minutes from where we expect to hit entry interface. So that's where Dragon will really start feeling the effects of being in a denser atmosphere. And then we are still tracking that blackout to come right around that same time. We are under 27 minutes away from splashdown. So we are under 27 minutes away from Bob and Doug being on planet Earth for the first time since May 30th.
To kind of put everything in perspective, the Dragon capsule departed from the International Space Station several hours ago, but according to what Dan just said, it's essentially halfway home just based on altitude alone. So the International Space Station is about 250 miles above Earth's surface. I think right now it's between 250 and 300. I think right now it's about 263 miles above Earth's surface. So based on that telemetry that Dan just read off, is from an altitude standpoint, Dragon is halfway home, and yet that second half is going to be covered in the next 27-ish minutes while we wait for splashdown and recovery, versus the several hours that we've been covering since yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah, and we will continue to see its speed drop as it's dropping out of orbit. It's starting to hit the atmosphere. It's starting to slow from the effects of that friction, generating the heat on the heat shield and building up the plasma eventually around the spacecraft. Its speed's going to continue to drop. It's already below 17,000 miles an hour, and it'll drop to essentially a terminal velocity of about 350 miles an hour right as those drogue chutes deploy. And those are going to pop out when sensors on the Dragon spacecraft, both GPS and pressure sensors, tell the spacecraft it's at the right altitude, and then those will automatically deploy. Those drogues coming out of the top section of the spacecraft using 2 mortars, or pyrotechnics essentially, to deploy those to do the initial slowing and stabilizing of the Dragon capsule.
Yeah, then after that, the main parachutes will pop out and further decelerate it to about 119 miles per hour. And then that will continue to decelerate. And by the time that the capsule is splashing down in the Gulf of Mexico, it's only going 15, 16 miles per hour. So significant reduction in speed there over just the course of a couple minutes. That, of course, is a pretty comfortable speed. The way that the astronauts have described it previously with other types of missions, also landing down, doing land landings at about the same rate. They said it feels like you're in a minor fender bender.
Yeah, you're definitely running into something. You'll feel it, but they do a lot of work with the seats and the restraints with these crew members just to make sure, while it may be a fender bender, you got more than a seatbelt essentially holding you in. So they're very secure in their suits and in their seats, and they're going to stay in there even after Dragon touches down. We'll still have communication with Dragon. Once they're in the water, it'll stay powered on. Probably most importantly, the air conditioner will continue to work while they're in the capsule in the now Gulf of Mexico, and much warmer temperatures than they've seen for the last couple of months. And we'll still be able to talk to them from here in Hawthorne, and the recovery teams will be able to as well.
Yeah.
One of the things we might see them do, depending on sea states and everything after they touch down and the crew themselves, they'll still have a couple of demonstration tasks potentially to carry out. They have a satellite phone inside of the capsule that has its own satellite antenna integrated into Dragon, and they're able to use that independent of Dragon's communication system. So one thing we might hear them do is do a test call on that to the teams here in Hawthorne. We wouldn't be able to hear the call, but you would hear the go to do it over the Dragon to ground audio that we've been listening to this entire time. So still have a couple of demonstration steps, essentially, as, again, this is a test flight. This is the flight to really prove out Dragon systems, to bring crew members from Kennedy Space Center to the space station and return them safely to Earth. And so far, we have had a flawless ride downhill. We've completed the deorbit burn. Dragon is continuing to drop down. It's right now at about 132 miles over the Pacific Ocean. Pretty soon we're going to see its ground track cross over Central America, out over the Gulf, culminating in that splashdown in the Gulf just off the coast of Pensacola.
Dragon SpaceX for entry brief. Okay, Doug, we have no update to timing because the burn went great, and your vehicle is still looking really good for entry. No health issues at this time.
Okay, Dragon copies, thank you.
In addition, the recovery team is go, and the weather is still great. Winds are about 2 knots and waves about 1 foot. From the ship, they're reporting very calm. How copy?
Copy, good weather at the landing area. Thank you.
Okay, and last piece is that we do expect some additional Radicom during entry prep 2 due to vehicle attitude. So if you can get us your entry check report a little bit prior to entry prep 2, we'd appreciate it.
Copy, we'll go.
Okay, thanks, Doug.
So there we just had a bit of a briefing between Mission Control and Bob and Doug up in Crew Endeavour, just confirming with them that the deorbit burn was great and that the timing on their pads doesn't need to be updated. We are able to upload new trajectory calculations, including times that remain live depending on how the burn goes, and at this point in time those don't need to be updated. It is important that they do remain accurate because Bob and Doug, their primary mission right now is to continue to monitor the vehicle status and telemetry and data being presented to them on their touchscreen displays in front of them, and so during the more dynamic events, they certainly want to be aware when things like parachute deploy will be happening and when splashdown is expected. So making sure that the timeline of events, the sequencing is accurate is certainly important in order for them to stay aware and updated of upcoming events.
Just another quick position check. Dragon still out over the Central Pacific, down to about 108 miles in altitude. And we're expecting that entry interface to come up in the next 4 minutes or so. Again, at that point, Dragon should be at an altitude of right around 62 statute miles, or about 100 kilometers. and that's when it really starts to feel the effects of the atmosphere. It starts to experience the lift and drag and other atmospheric effects it's been free from while flying in the near vacuum of low Earth orbit. So continuing to drop in altitude, still looking for an on-time splashdown. Should just be about 19 minutes from now. And just a reminder, we do have that blackout period coming. So as they continue to dip in the Earth's atmosphere and get lower and lower, the atmosphere gets thicker and thicker, and it's going to generate more and more heat, eventually heating up the outside of Dragon to 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. And as it hits that peak heating, it'll also be forming a plasma around the spacecraft. So we do expect to lose comm for about 6 minutes.
SpaceX Dragon crew entry preps are complete.
SpaceX copies. Entry prep complete. Thank you.
A call from Spacecraft Commander Doug Hurley. Entry preps are complete. So they are on board, they are monitoring, they are ready to come home.
Yeah, and as of right now, entry prep should have also included final configuration of their flight suits. So we had a question from our social media earlier if the visors will be up or down. Those visors should be down at this point as part of that entry prep check. In that last briefing, we also heard that the weather is looking good. In a previous report, the phrasing was, "It looks like glass." And that is certainly ideal for a water splashdown. That being said, the recovery timeline, Bob and Doug should be out of the capsule within an hour after splashing down. So good to hear that the weather is good. We saw blue skies and a couple of white fluffy clouds out there in the Gulf of Mexico as we got views from our recovery vessel Go Navigator. But glad to hear that conditions are sustaining and that winds also are looking really good, around 2.5 miles per hour. So hardly anything at all. Really couldn't ask for better conditions for a splashdown day.
We kind of threaded the needle once again, almost like we did on launch with the weather today. Your upper limits for wind were about 10 miles an hour, so we're well below that threshold for a splashdown today. The Dragon coming up on 82 miles in altitude, continuing to dip down. We're expecting that entry interface to start pretty soon, where the vehicle itself is really going to start heating up. It's going to continue to use its Draco thrusters to maintain its attitude as it continues through the Earth's atmosphere, and we'll have that comm blackout coming up in just a couple of minutes as well.